Good morning. This is Amy Walsh, and we're going to go ahead and get started with the Show Me How Fall Series 2013 Year End Close webinar. We've got quite a bit of content to cover today. I think I have about 48 slides. So we're going to run through this. It's probably a lot more information than you wanted to know, but it's great information not only for the year end close, but also the month end close and different tasks and processes you might want to consider running for your month end close. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to actually mute you guys on your end, but we're going to open up the floor to questions at the end of the webinar. So just hang in there, okay? Thank you. Okay, the first thing we want to talk about is year end close, and some of the items that we will be covering is what is the difference between month end and year end close. Another item is what order should the GP modules be closed, and what pre-close tasks should be completed before closing the year. So diving into what is the difference between month end close and year end close. The month end close is actually considered more of a soft close. You'll have different accounting processes and tasks that are similar in some cases to year end close. For example, in the accounts payable module at month end, you would actually tie the payables aging report or the payables management submodule to the general ledger AP accounts, as well as you would close the fiscal period by going into the fiscal period window and checking off a box. And as you know, the fiscal period window can be reopened and transactions can be posted to past periods that are in the current year. For year-end close, this is more of a permanent close. What you'll be doing is you'll be running certain year-end processes that would actually close out that particular module. But you also have to keep in mind that Dynamics GP is a date-sensitive application. So by closing the year, you're actually performing application processes that relate to actually moving the data from the current year tables to historical tables. As well as, depending on the module, you'll be doing certain cleanup processes. Now, what order should GP modules be closed? Well, for one, I actually came up with a little diagram here, maybe to help you see it a little better as far as what order to close the modules in. First of all, you're going to want to start with the sales order processing close. That is, if you are using sales order processing, otherwise known as SOP. And then you'll move over to the purchase order processing close if you are using the purchase order processing module, otherwise known as POP. And then you'll go down to the receivables, not the receivables management, but next you would want to do the inventory close, and then the receivables management close, the payables management close, and you can go from payables management to the banking, which is the cash management, and closing that out, and then the fixed assets close, the payroll close, and then finally the general ledger close. At the end, I do have some slides to kind of show this in a more linear order, so stay tuned for that. One of the most important things in any Dynamics GP year-end close is before you run any Dynamics GP routine, utility, or year-end close process, what should you do? And this is very important, so make a backup. And this is just a little cute cartoon that I found that kind of drives the point home of, I don't want to tell you what happens if you forget to back up your computer. And basically in our case, I don't want to tell you what happens if you forget to back up your company databases. Especially when running year-end close processes, routines, and utilities. Now, when should tasks be done and Dynamics GP processes run? Now, general accounting tasks can be done at month end close, and users can be in the system. And when I'm talking about, the general accounting tasks, that's anything from, all you're doing is checking balances and running reports, things of that nature. Those are things you do monthly anyway. But number two, any Dynamics GP closing utilities or routine processes. And I'm going to go through some and talk about some routines in utility processes, so you'll kind of have a better understanding of what those are and what happens when you run those. But I do want to say that those processes are done when everybody is out of the system. And depending on your volume of data in your database is going to actually impact how long the process will run. So, for example, when I say, the closing utilities or routine processes are done when everybody's out of the system, in a lot of cases, I am talking about, for example, nights or weekends. Also, for companies with large amounts of data, it is recommended to run the year-end utilities and our routines on a test database before running in production. This is actually, is optional. It's just something to consider. It depends on how large your volume transaction is. If you've had trouble in the past with your servers or during month-end close, it could be a good idea to run these processes, year-end routines, in a test environment first. Now, the last tip, this tip pertains to all modules, and it's 2014 transactions can be added to 2014 batches. However, do not post the batch until 2013 is closed. Now, what I'm talking about there is if you are still in 2013, you need to get everything in and posted to your submodules and close out, as soon as feasible. Because the transactions that you'll be getting in for 2014, what you want to do is actually just add them to a different batch. Maybe call it 2014 or accounts payable, 2014 or whatever. And hold those transactions in that batch until after 2013 is closed. And the reason for this is if you post the 2014 transactions in 2013, submodules are not closed. What will happen is that information on those transactions are going to get meshed in with 2013 information for the submodules, like vendor year-to-date amounts or average days pay calculation won't be right. It also impacts certain fields on the smart list. There's a large conglomerate of different fields this can actually impact. So it's always a good idea for those 2014 transactions to be held in a separate batch until after the 2013 close. Now let's dive right into our first module we want to close. If you have sales order processing, this is kind of the order that you would want to go through, and in a lot of the stuff, the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are actually more are a month end as well. What you want to do is you want to go through and review your back orders. You want to release and fill your back orders. You want to invoice all shipped orders. You want to post all the 2013 shipped orders, and you want to print your reports. Now, I know some of you are looking at me going, well, what reports are suggested and this, that, and the other. I actually have a Excel cheat sheet, and I put it out on the Dynamics Care blog this morning. So at the end of this presentation, I will show you the link to how to get to that blog and to download my a year-end close cheat sheet, okay? Now, okay, print reports, and then optional is reconcile sales documents. The next one is optional as well, is remove completed sales documents. Now, if you don't run these two processes, you're probably wondering what they are, but don't worry, I'm going to tell you. What is reconcile sales documents? Now, here's the path to this window. And in Microsoft Dynamics GP, what I do is I go through Microsoft Dynamics GP on the toolbar, tools, utilities, sales, reconcile, remove sales documents. What this routine does is it actually verifies and recalculates quantity and totals on sales documents. The task also performs with, reconcile sales documents. Tasks are performed. It sums the extended prices and verifies that subtotals are correct. It verifies remaining quantities. It verifies the batch controls for batches. if selected in the posting setup. It verifies the remaining subtotal figure on sales document detail entry. It verifies fulfilled quantities for serial and lot number items, and there's calculation there. It verifies quantities on quotes, orders, invoices, and back orders, and it verifies quantities on returns. And now with the reconciliation process, what this also does is it does, it will update, certain data. So you kind of have to be careful with it. That's why I always say, before you do something like this, you want to, make sure you have a backup. The next one is, what is remove completed sales documents? The path to this window is Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Utilities, Sales, Reconcile, and Remove Sales Documents. Now, when you run this particular routine, and this is a utility. So when I have mentioned in the past, if you run a utility, always make a backup, and you want to make sure people are out of the system when you do this. The following documents are removed from the work file and moved to history if you're keeping history during the transfer process. Any completed quote documents, completed order documents, and completed back order documents. Now, if you are keeping history, the completed documents are moved from the work file to the history file. A document is considered complete if it does not contain a deposit and if all line items have a remaining quantity of 0. Now, the following documents can be removed: quotes, orders, back orders, and invoices. Now, a lot of people think when they see remove sales documents, they think, oh, am I deleting something? If you are keeping history, nothing is deleted. All it is moved to a history table, and that's it. You still have access to all this information. And this is what the window would look like. So the interesting and neat thing about this window is it has a print report only checkbox. Now, if you check the print report only box to review, you'll be able to print a report and review information regarding the selected documents before you actually do the reconcile or remove process. But always remember, these two processes are optional. Okay, moving on to purchase order processing. Purchase order processing, what you want to do is you want to print your open purchase report. You want to close any purchase orders that can be closed. You want to print received not invoiced reports. Reconcile received not invoiced to GL. And then optional is to remove completed purchase orders. And then what you'll do is close the period. Now, one thing I want to mention about sales order processing and purchase order processing is that these two modules do not have a close year window. And we're going to see or start seeing the close year windows when we come up on inventory and receivables management and payables management. But for sales order processing and purchase order processing, those windows, there are no windows for year-end close. So for purchase order processing, we're going to dive into what is remove completed purchase orders. The path to this window is below. You would go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Routines, Purchasing, Remove Completed Purchase Orders. Now, purchase orders that have a status of closed or canceled can be moved to history. That is, if you are keeping history. If you are not keeping history, this routine will delete the purchase order from your company database. And this is what the window looks like. Now, unlike the sales order processing window, this window does not have a print report processing button. As you can see, there's no little printer button there. Only process when users are out of the system. You may want to also consider testing in a test company before you run this process in production. And remember to make a backup of the company database before you run this process. Now, with this particular window, you'll see up here there's a document range. It says PO number. You can click that drop down. You'll have a few other options. You can actually just do a range of purchase orders. You can also, with the document range, you can do a date range in there. So this gives you the ability to kind of narrow down the documents you want to run the utility on. It is ideal to run this, maybe quarterly or semi-annually, or at least annually. You don't have to use 12/31 date or anything like that. What you would want to do is maybe go a few months back, is say maybe 6/30/2013 or 9/30/2013, and that way you make sure that those purchase orders at that point they should be received, because if they not, you should be reviewing those to figure out what is going on with that purchase order, if you have back order items, or if they're canceled or whatever. And this is all part of just cleaning up purchase order processing if you're using the purchase order processing module. And we mentioned before with sales order processing and purchase order processing about the history. Run the process, and if you're keeping history, it moves it to the historical tables. If you're not, it deletes it out of the system. So a question that usually comes up is, how do I know if I'm keeping history? Well, these are part of your setup options. When GP is first implemented, you have gone in, or your consultant has gone in and actually checked these boxes. Now you want to make sure that they're checked before you run these routines as well. So if you go to, as far as purchase order processing goes, if you go to Microsoft Dynamics GP Tools, Setup Purchase Order Processing, you will open this window, and you'll see highlighted in red down there, there's a Maintain History section. You'll see purchase order, account distributions, and receipts. You'll want to make sure all three of these boxes are checked, because this is what is telling GP maintain the history for this. Now, similar to purchase order processing, I want to back up one to sales order processing. Sales order processing has a very similar window. So if you were to go to Microsoft Dynamics GP Tool Setup and sales order processing, you will also see a maintain history section in there, and just make sure that those check boxes are checked. So moving on to inventory. Handling inventory is probably it's similar in nature, but it's right before we do Receivables Management closed. So with the inventory, we want to make sure that all 2013 inventory related transactions are posted. And then there's an optional here. You can perform fiscal or cycle counts and post any adjustments. There is print inventory stock status report. And then you want to reconcile the value of the inventory to GL. Now, all of these, except for the post, you want to make sure everything's posted. But all these can be optional, as far as if you're not doing inventory counts at the moment, if you don't want to print inventory stock status report, I do recommend you do that. But if you don't, it is optional. And reconciling the value of inventory to GL, you can do this, or you not can do this, or you just can make sure that the inventory agrees to your GL. Now, as far as inventory goes, if you're going to run the reconcile routine for inventory, the first thing is make a backup. Now, to get to this window, you want to go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Utilities, Inventory, and Reconcile. Now, reconciling modules should always be done in the following order. So if you are going to reconcile the inventory, you more than likely, it is optional, you don't have to, but it is best practice to go ahead and run the sales order processing reconcile, the purchase order processing reconcile, and then run the inventory reconcile. Now, you'll also notice, let me go back. You'll also notice with this reconcile inventory quantities that, it doesn't have a print before you process report either. So, this is something, make sure you have a backup. You might want to do this in a test company before you do it in production. And then there is the inventory year and close window. Now, remember I said, sales order processing and purchase order processing do not have a year and closing window. Inventory begins where we do have closing windows. And you'll see that you can get to this window by going to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Routines, Inventory, Year and Close. Now, this window has, a few additional items here for 2013. There is a remove section. Now, you want to check the boxes for any items you do not want to keep in the system for next year. In the discontinued items over here, if you check this box to remove discontinued item records that are completely sold. And this is also used for removing item records during the year in closed process unless quantities exist for the item or if the item is assigned to a kit. Item is a component of a bill of materials, or item has one or more bill of materials of its own. Then there's the sold lot attributes. Now, if you check this box, you're checking the box to remove a lot numbered item attributes that have been sold. The sold receipts and cost change history prior to. If you check this box to remove all sold purchase receipts and historical cost changes for items that use average perpetual, LIFO, or FIFO periodic valuation methods, and enter date. The sold receipts, quantity sold details, and historical cost changes with dates that are before the date entered will be removed. It is recommended that you do print a purchase receipts report and review receipts that will be removed. The last section down here at the bottom on this window is an update. This is the item standard cost. Now, the item standard cost, if you check this box, you'll update the standard cost of items using the FIFO periodic or LIFO periodic valuation. Choosing this option, the standard cost of items will be adjusted automatically to the current cost. Now, once that process is run, what you'll want to do is go into the fiscal periods window and actually check the box to close it off. So you would go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Setup, Company, and Fiscal Periods. So next we're going to talk about Receivables Management. Now, with Receivables Management, you do want to perform the month-end processing steps, which are you can assess finance charges if applicable, post financial charges batch if applicable, transfer commissions, and then post all 2013 receivables transactions batches. Next, you'll want to age accounts receivable by going to the Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Routines, Sales, and Aging. Next, you'll want to print the aging report and check that it ties to the general ledger AR accounts. Review and apply any missed unapplied documents, meaning if you have any credit memos that need to be applied to an invoice or any payments that need to be applied to an invoice. Then the next step, and this is optional, is paid transactions removal. Now, before you run this, and I'm going to discuss it, but before you run any kind of removals, and this is actually a routine, we want to make a backup and have users exit Dynamics GP before running this process if you choose to run paid transaction removal. So what is paid transaction removal? Well, in receivables, customer payments that pay in full a document this document does not automatically move to history. GP considers the transaction as an open transaction and it continues to display it on the aging report along with the associated payments. So this means, unless you run the paid transaction removal, it stays on there forever and ever and ever on your aging report, which, can make the aging report quite large. The reasoning is joined to the customer statements. So clients can use customer statements. Some do and some don't. So you might want to think about this if you are or if you are not using customer statements to run this routine. So the reason is joined to the use of customer statements. Both the paid invoice and its associated payments can appear on the customer statement. Now, what this process of paid transaction removal does is it consolidates all balance forward transaction amounts and adds the total to the non-current period amount. If you are keeping history, transactions are moved to history. If you are not keeping history, then they are deleted from the system. So once again, I talked about finding where the history is. What you'll want to do is go to your setup window. In the setup window, the path is always the same. It's Microsoft Dynamics GP, and it'll be like Tools, Setup, and then your series such as Sales, and then you'll see Receivables Management. That same path will also give you Sales Order processing setup window. Now, next, moving these fully paid transactions to history means that these transactions no longer appear on the age trial balance report. And which is okay, because it doesn't mean that you can't get them on there or have them print. What it means is it just takes it off of the general, age trial balance report. And it also, if you run this routine and you are using customer statements, they no longer will appear on the customer statements. Now, with the receivables management, we always know the first thing we do before we close or do a year-end close routine is make a backup. Now, next we want to close the receivables management, which means all users must be out of the system for year-end close routine. And to get to the window, we want to go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Routine, Sales, Year-end Close. Now, with this window is very simple. All you have to do is click Year-end Close, and it goes through its little process. That's it. Next, we want to go to and close the fiscal period, which you go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Setup, Company, and Fiscal Periods, and check the box for Receivables Management. Next, if you are using this feature of GP, you want to close the sales tax period for the year if applicable. So you'll go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Routine, Sales, and Sales Year-end Close, which is a small little window, and all you have to do is click Close. Now, moving on to Payables Management, you will, first of all, perform month-end close processing steps. So first of all, we want to process the recurring payables if applicable. You want to post all the 2013 payables transactions. You want to print payables aging report. And you want to check that aging report ties to the general ledger AP accounts. And then next, of course, we want to back up our company database. Now, next we want to perform the year-end processing steps, which is close the year, which we know users must be out of the system for year-end close routine. To get to the year-end close window, what we'll want to do is go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Routines, Purchasing, Year-end Close. Now, after we do the year-end close here, we'll also want to go to, and if you are using the sales tax feature, we will want to go over to the sales tax periods window and close the sales tax. And once again, users must be out of the system for this year-end close routine. Microsoft Dynamics GP, and you'll want to go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Routines, Company, Tax Year, and Close. And then lastly, we want to close the fiscal period. So you'll go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Setup, Company, and Fiscal Periods. Now, with the banking close, I know I listed it. However, there is not a year-end close window for this. I do include it on the list just so you don't want to get so involved in, I have to do this task, that task, run this, run that, and then kind of forget about, I got to reconcile the bank account. So I just added one slide in here for this. And for the banking close, there is no routine to run for the closing the banking module. However, as part of month-end and year-end close, you will want to make sure that your checkbooks are reconciled. And it's that simple. Fixed assets. So first of all, with fixed assets, we want to perform the month-end closing process. We want to enter in all 2013 fixed assets. We want to depreciate all assets to the end of the year. We want to perform the GL posting routine. We want to post fixed assets GL batches. And then we want to run the year-end reports that you want to keep for year-end financial records. Now, all this information, even though I'm not putting the path on each one of the bullet points, like I said before, I have my year-end close cheat sheet that I just posted this morning out on the Dynamics Care blog, and I'm going to give you that link at the end of this webinar so you can go and actually download it. And on that link, it will have all the paths to, all the recommended reports, for year-end close. So that's why I didn't put them all on the slides. Now, for fixed assets, the year-end close process, you have some optional items here. There are two of them. First of all, verify that the fixed asset calendar is correct. And to get to this window, you want to go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Setup, Fixed Assets, and Calendar. Now, in version 2013 is a little different. What you want to do is select the calendar ID and click the Verify button. Now, versions prior to 2013, you will go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Utilities, Fixed Assets, and Build Calendar. And then there's a Verify button on that window, and you want to click it. The second bullet point is also optional. This is verify that fixed asset quarters are set up correctly. Now, to get to the quarters window, you would go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Setup, Fixed Assets, Quarter. You would select the calendar ID and then click on the printer icon at the top right corner of this window. Now, to close fixed assets, there is a closing window, and you get to this closing window by clicking on Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Routines, Fixed Asset, and Year End. Now, you'll see on this particular window that my selected books are over in the right. When you first open this window, the available books are going to be on the left. So all I do is I highlight them by just clicking on them. And then I go and I click on All, which puts them over in the selected books. And then I hit Continue. Now, one thing to note with the fixed assets, with the fixed asset close, is that it's going to go to this routine, but it's not going to print, a report. So just know that, when it's finished, just, it'll let you know that it's finished. But there's not going to be a report that prints or anything like that. After you do the close, you would want to go over to your reporting section and print your reports from there. And there's not a year-end report. These are just your general, depreciation or additions or retirements and reports such as that. Now, payroll, which comes before general ledger, we are actually going to do another webinar next Tuesday. And Philip Nicholas, who is our resident payroll expert, is going to go into a lot more information on payroll year-end close and what are the differences between, I wouldn't say different versions, but, what are the new items in 2013 and what's been updated. So you'll definitely want to join him on Tuesday, December 10th from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And if you need to sign up for that webinar, you can always go to http://demand.dynamicscare.com/GP webinars. Now, if you need information a lot sooner than that webinar, you can also go to http://support.microsoft.com and KB for knowledge base. There is a knowledge base article that is numbered 850663, and this will give you a lot of information on payroll as well. Now we are down to general ledger. Now for the general ledger, you want to perform your month-end closing steps. First of all, you want to ensure that all accruals, reclasses, and general ledger batches are posted for 2013. This is extremely important, so you don't want to miss that. And the next one is very, very, very important. And what you want to do is you want to use SmartList to verify that the GL accounts have the correct posting type of either a balance sheet or profit and loss. Now, the SmartList that I use is located, if you go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, SmartList, Financial and Accounts. The SmartList is called Accounts. And I just run the SmartList and I dump it all into Excel, and then I go through and I put the GL accounts in order, and I kind of look through, okay, these are all the the assets, this is all the liabilities, this is all the equity, this is all, everything that should be P&L. And I go through and make sure that they either have balance sheet or they have profit and loss. And the reason for this is because if you have an incorrect GL account, for example, if you have a profit and loss or an expense account that is labeled as a balance sheet account, when you perform the general ledger close at year end, that expense account will not be closed out to retained earnings because you labeled it as balance sheet. It's going to roll forward, which will cause your balance sheet, your financial report, your balance sheet will be off, because of your retained earnings will be off, and your profit and loss going forward will be off. So you need to be very, very cognizant and careful of this, and you need to make sure that you go through this, carefully. Because what happens is, if you label it incorrectly and you've gone through your year-end close routine, and you found that this happened to you, that, oh, I have an expense account that's, I label as balance sheet, or vice versa, you'll actually have to get help desk or a consultant to help you go behind the scenes and update and correct that, because there are certain SQL scripts that you have to run. Okay, so year-end close stats. Now, what we want to do as far as the year-end close is, after we gone through and performed our month-end close and we did our smart list, we looked at our GL accounts, we had the year-end close. So we want to check that the fiscal year for 2014 is set up. Now, how you do that is you go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tool, Setup, Company, and Fiscal Periods. And you check that the financial box for the first period in the new year, which will be 2014, is unchecked, as well as the last period of 2013 is unchecked. Now, if you follow this path, you'll open your fiscal periods setup window. Now, you can use the drop down here and click it and then pick a year, or you can key in a year. If your 2014 year does not exist, what you do is just key in 2014. Now, if you have 2013 in the window or whatever, that's fine. Just key over 2013 and key in 2014. Then what you'll do is make sure your first day and your last day are correct. And as we see on Fabricam, our first day is January 1, our last day is December 31st. The number of periods, if you have a calendar year, you'll have 12 periods. If you have a fiscal year and you have a different number of periods, you would add your number of periods into this particular field. Now, once you have this information set, just click the calculate button, and what it'll do is it'll create all these periods down here at the bottom. Now, and sometimes, if you don't have a 2014, some people go ahead and make a 2015 and a 2016 year as well, so they're not having to do it every year. You want to make sure, this financial box right here is unchecked, and you can manually check the box for unchecked, or if you wanted to, and this is the new year, if you want to just click the button for open all, it'll uncheck all boxes. Now, if I needed to go and make sure the 2013 year, the last period, is unchecked, I would actually just do the drop down, click on 2013, scroll down to my last period, which would be period 12 for me, and I would just uncheck the box in the financial section, to make sure that that period was open for my GL. Now, people do ask me, they're like, well, why do you have to have these two boxes unchecked? Because it seems a little strange that you would have the last period of 2013 and the first period of 2014 unchecked. So what happens when you do the year-end close for the general ledger is that GP actually creates the closing entry in 2013, so it has to post in the financial series in 2013. And it also, it has information that is rolling forward to 2014. So in essence, it's creating two journal entries there. So you want to make sure that, the 2014 first period is unchecked, so it will be able to post to that period. Next is we want to check that the retained earnings account exists on the general ledger setup window. So if you go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tool, Setup, Financial, and General Ledger, there is a section and it's called Retained Earnings. Now, what you want to make sure of is that account number in here, this, whatever your retained earnings account number exists. Now, if you're going to use divisional account segments, that is, if your chart of accounts is set up with divisions and you want to close, based on a percentage of, for the year, you can actually use the close to divisional account segments. Now, it's a little bit more information than I could fit into this webinar. So once again, out on the blog I posted this morning on Dynamics Care, and I'll give you the link to that when we finish this webinar. It has a link to information regarding closing to divisional account segments that you can actually go in and read. But definitely make sure you have, a GL account for your retained earnings in this particular field. Next, for the general ledger close, we want to make a backup. Then we're going to perform the financial year closing. So with this particular routine, you'll have to have all users exit Dynamics GP, and then you will want to go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Routine, Financial, and Year-End Closing. Now, for people using GP prior to version 2013, you're not going to have these two boxes, or actually these 4 boxes, and with version 2013, they actually incorporated a progress bar. So you will see, the progress of the closing down here at the bottom of the window. But anybody prior to 2013, sorry, those don't exist. More incentive to upgrade. Okay, so with general ledger, I want to talk about a few things. Here's what's new in GP 2013. First of all, the remove unused segment numbers. Now, if you mark this option to remove any account segments during the year in closing process that are not used in an account number, and all that means is, like what it says, if you're not using this particular segment and you want to get rid of those segments you aren't using, then check this box, and during the year in closing routine, it will actually just get rid of those segments. Now, with the main inactive accounts, this second checkbox down here, what this says is inactive accounts with 0 balances that you want to keep inactive. Check the box and select which accounts to maintain. Now, and also to delete all inactive accounts with 0 balances, unmark maintain inactive accounts. You must check off the box, maintain inactive accounts, and then once you do that, with budget amounts and with inactive accounts will actually open up, so you can actually select those too. Those have their own set of properties. So with the budget amounts, you would mark to keep inactive accounts with 0 balances that have budget amounts from being deleted during the process. Inactive accounts with 0 balances and no budget amounts will be deleted. The second option down here, all inactive accounts, means that if you mark this, you're marking it to keep all inactive accounts from being deleted during the process. Now, once you have this window and you make sure you have a retained earnings account, the starting journal entry will default. You can select or not select these options. All you do is just click Close Year. I mean, it's just the same on every closing window. There'll be like close. It'll either say Close Year or Close a Process. All right, so with the general ledger, here's some additional information that I wanted to add. The general ledger close does not have to be performed with other sub-module closing. However, it's preferred. And what I mean by that is that you can go through and close your sub-modules and leave the general ledger open for a while. You don't have to immediately close it as soon as you close all of your sub-modules. But like I said, it is best practice to do so. And the reason for that is until the GL close is performed, the 2014 financial statements will not be correct. So you want to make sure that you close out 2013 as soon as possible. But also remember that you can go back 1 year back and post to the GL. So just because you close it out doesn't mean that you can't go back and make an audit adjustment or an accrual or whatever. Because what happens is if you close out 2013 and you're in 2014 and you come along and you're like, hey, I need to make these accruals for year end, you can most certainly go back and do that. Now, you'll want to go back to your fiscal periods and open them up like we saw earlier, where you're opening up 2013 financial, the last period, and 2014, the first period. We want to make sure those two are open. And that way that when you do a transaction to 2013, after it's closed, that it will produce the correct journal entry. So it's going to post in 2013, and this needs to either roll or add it to retained earnings in 2014. Now, the GL close, what it does is this process. It closes the PL accounts to retained earnings and rolls the balance sheet accounts forward. Now, for all your accountants out there, you already know this, and this is what it does. Now, I'm actually at the review point. So what I want to go over briefly, because I really need this to sink in, is that remember that the modules remember the modules have to be closed in order. And this is the order. And if you're using sales order processing and purchase order processing, do the sales order processing first, purchase order processing second, inventory third, and then go down to receivables management, payables management, banking I put in there, but just reconcile your bank accounts. Fixed assets, payroll, and general ledger. So that's the order that you need to do the closes in. Also remember that not all modules have a year-end close window. The ones that do not are sales order processing, purchase order processing, banking. The modules that do have a year-end close window are the inventory, receivables management, payables management, fixed assets, and general ledger. And also, I want to remind you that for 2014 transactions, they should be added to 2014 batches. However, do not post those batches until 2013 is closed. And also remember to have all users exit Dynamics GP and make your backups before running any utilities, routines, or year-end close process windows. So now I'm going to open it up for any some questions here real quick. And also on this particular slide I have presenting now, at the bottom of it, this is where you can actually access my year-end close cheat sheet. I put it up on a blog, so just when you open up the blog, you'll see year-end close cheat sheet, and just double click that link and it will take you to box.net, and you can download the Excel worksheet. Oh yeah, and don't forget that to sign up for, if you're using payroll, that Philip Nichols is actually going to do a webinar next Tuesday from 11 to 12, and he is a phenomenal payroll person, so bring questions. I want to thank you all for joining me on the year-end close webinar, and I hope to be able to do some other presentations, and you guys can join me then as well. So thank you and have a good day.